In an article written for the Washington Post, the headline reads, "The Orioles' first month was a mess. Can they still recover?" Baltimore finished April with a 12-18 record. After a cautious offseason approach failed to pay dividends, is it too late to turn things around? Tyrone Bowman live. Welcome to the program. Let me clean my glasses over here. Then we'll talk about what happened with the Orioles. According to an article written for the Washington Post, let's get down to it. This article was written by Chelsea Janice. Quote, "The Baltimore Orioles finally won a tough game Wednesday night, a game in which they fell behind and rallied, looked vulnerable, and held on. A much-needed reminder that winning is still possible, maybe even something they can do regularly again." A day after potential rotation savior Kyle Gibson surrendered 4 home runs to the first 5 batters he faced and left his Orioles shell-shocked. They somehow earned a series win against the first-place New York Yankees. They ended April with a reason to believe May can be better. In fairness, after a 12-18 first month in which their starting rotation, 6.04 ERA, was worse in the American League by more than a run, it is hard to envision a month getting worse. Regardless, Baltimore will start May with a season that can go one of two ways. The first one, once unfathomable for a team that spent the winter wondering how to go deeper in the playoffs rather than worrying about getting there. Is it that it continues to sputter? The Orioles' pitching does not recover, their offense cannot compensate, and they end up wasting a year of their treasured window to contend in total mediocrity. This scenario will probably include casualties, whether in the clubhouse or the manager's office or even upstairs. After an agonizing rebuild, this team is too talented to squander its chances. The other option is recovery. The worst AL team to qualify for last year's postseason was the Detroit Tigers, who finished with 86 wins. To reach 86 wins this year, the Orioles will need to go 74-58 the rest of the way, a .561 winning percentage. This core played to a .623 winning percentage for 162 games in 2023 and a .562 winning percentage despite a dismal second half in 2024. The math does not rule out a revival. But however hindsight shades the memories, make no mistake, April left the Orioles soul-searching and pushed a season they cannot afford to waste to the brink. There was a 24-2 loss, and there was a players-only meeting. There were injuries, maybe even enough to qualify as an excuse, at least enough for General Manager Mike Elias to admit the pitching depth he built to combat them had already run out. There was a slump, closed-door conversations, and a return to old trusted celebrations because, hey, they had to try something. And there was the unforgettable look of total helplessness on manager Brandon Hyde's face when Gibson, the veteran, signaled to stabilize their failing rotation, crumbled in seconds Tuesday night. Tensions always boil when shortcomings easily spotted in the offseason become deficits, not easily addressed in the regular season. But after last year's stalwart, Corbin Burns signed with Arizona, the Orioles' willingness to replace quality with quantity in their starting rotation left them with neither when injuries to right-handers Grayson Rodriguez and Zach Eflin hit. The Orioles' front office is facing that failure now, but pitching was tough to find in January, let alone May. And Baltimore has not been able to duplicate the success it had developing young hitters when it comes to young starters, so the answers are not in-house. Still, How does a highly intelligent front office with all kinds of data swing and miss at so obvious and need as stabilizing its starting rotation? Well, growth does not paint by numbers. And when they did not sign or trade for a bona fide ace or two this winter, the Orioles built around a starting pitching foundation made of concrete that had not dried. For example, Rodriguez has taken huge steps toward ace status in recent years, but he has also struggled with injuries. When the Orioles did not get an ace, they planned for Rodriguez to fill the void, hoping the oft injured rightly is leaning how to stay healthy. In other words, they planned for something that had never proved it was possible. Or consider the trade for left hander Trevor Rogers at last year's deadline. At the time, trading two top prospects seemed like a hefty investment for the former first round pick with a career ERA over 4.30. But logic was visible. He is under team control until 2027. So he would help for multiple years. Plus, the Orioles, as pitching guys, had fixed mediocre pitchers before. They could do it again and then a steal. Perhaps they will polish him into something yet. Rogers is working his way back from a knee injury and is yet to make his 2025 debut, but he has never consistently been that starter before. Not every pitching acquisition is yielding the worst case scenario. Tamayaki Sugano, the 35-year-old they signed from Japan, owns a 3.0 ERA and looks more comfortable every start. Kyle Bradish might return from last June's Tommy John surgery, needing time to find himself in the second half. He also might look like the Cy Young candidate he was before his injury. In other words, building a rotation around Rodriguez, Sagano, Eflin, and struggling veteran Charlie Morton was not doomed to fail in every version of the 2025 season, but it was nowhere near certain to succeed in most of them. Burns was a sure thing, and people familiar with the off-season conversations are adamant Baltimore made a legitimate push to sign him. But those people also say Burns' intentions to play closer to his Arizona home was clear from the start. And therefore, the Orioles probably should have anticipating needing to pivot. They have the prospect talent to match what Boston sent to the Chicago White Sox for ace left-hander Garrett Crutchett. They had the money to shop at the top free agent tier, but they didn't make those moves. And when the rotation faltered, it put a roster full of still evolving players prone to pressing into early inning deficits again and again. So add the Hwatzman and Gunnar Henderson and Jordan Westburg. The latter two, also dealing with early season injuries, found themselves struggling at precisely the time when the team needed them most, just like they did in October. Herein lies another challenge Baltimore has struggled to navigate: the humanity of its young stars. By no fault of its own, this Orioles core is made up of players whose first taste of confidence ravaging, identity shaking baseball adversity came at the highest level. So then, Rotzman struggled in the second half of last year. For example, he spiraled. When Henderson struggled to start his career, the Orioles' great offensive star spent much of the first 2 weeks hanging his head or shaking it both. And Westberg, now on the injured list with a hamstring injury, endured an Orioles 30 stretch in which his normally stoic demeanor turned visibly stern. The front office identified the young star's battle with pressure as something to address this year when they assess what went wrong in 2024. They hired a new mental performance coach to be available whenever major leaguers need him. They brought in beloved former class AAA manager Buck Britton as a familiar ally in the dugout. But when debacle hit this past month, it was no surprise that the two most tested veterans, Cedric Mullins and Ryan O'Hearn, proved the most consistent performers. They know what Rotzman Henderson and the other young Orioles have no way of knowing until they prove it to themselves. that even the most all consuming baseball struggles are neither career defining nor permanent. It was Mullins and O'Hare who held a hitters only meeting a few weeks ago, according to reporting in the Baltimore Sun. The offense will probably be the least of this team's concerns. Rotsman's batting average on balls in play suggests he has hit into endless bad luck. Henderson is finally starting to hit the ball hard more regularly. Westberg will return from the injury list soon. Colton Cowser, who broke his thumb on opening day, will also help when he returns. Sure, this is a scenario in which none of them rediscover their form. But there is also a scenario in which they recover and look like all stars again. And in doing so, build resilience for the next time they struggle. Reinforcements are coming for the rotation too. Eflin will be back soon. Rodriguez will return eventually, and Bradish is on track to return in the second half. One or more of them will help. And if there is an advantage of building around still sitting bricks, it is that they might just harden into something stronger than before. There you have it for baseball news. We'll see who we talk about next. Never surrender, never quit.